Media, where you are. Getting up close and intimate. Totally not taboo with Tracy. Celebrating sexual positivity both in and outside the bedroom.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Totally Not Taboo with Tracy. This is where we talk about everything taboo around sex and sexuality here on your media, hashtag where you are. So today we have a very, very, very exciting episode for you. We are talking to David Ross, all the way from Australia, about Sexpo. David is known worldwide as Mr. Sexpo, and it's not really a beauty pageant title, although maybe he has won the title, a beauty, pageant title in his time. But I'm very, very excited that he has agreed to join us. For us, it's morning. For him, it's the afternoon. And welcome, David. Thank you very much again for
Good
taking the time.
morning to you, Tracy. Yes, you're right. It is good evening here, but 5:30 in the afternoon. So.
Fabulous. So I have listened to many podcasts. I've seen you live. Recently, you spoke on Cliff Central, and you have a very colorful history. So would you like to give us your background and tell us how exactly you got into the industry?
Well, colourful is a very flattering term. Look, I was a motor mechanic by trade many years ago, and I had a car accident in 1980 on Christmas Day, actually in 1980, which resulted in a very long convalescing period, and as a result, I couldn't work as a motor mechanic any longer. So I did what any red-blooded young bloke does, and invested his insurance policy, or some of his insurance payout, into a brothel, which was illegal at the time, but there was a moratorium in place, and the business was going to become legal should it meet certain criteria that I worked out it would fulfill. So I happily wrote a check and bought into that business, and that was the beginning of my experience with the adult industry. And it was an interesting time, as I say, because it was illegal at the time. It attracted criminals by definition. So, but then many years later, once Sexpo was started, obviously that was much more of a legitimate type business, and Sexpo has been Sexpo ever since.
Excellent. And owning a brothel, what was that like?
Well, I actually used to do the cleaning there at some stages, because I felt that I couldn't really participate in the business, because you can't have a man, work receptioning or So I really had I spent a lot of time playing around with my friends, and really it was an investment more than anything, and it did take me quite a few years to get my money back out of it, I might add. The people involved in it were less than forthcoming when it was time to sell out, but we got a result in the end, and that was the most important thing. But look, it was a great family atmosphere. It was a small place, 6 rooms, and the legislation in Victoria is that's the maximum. You can only have 6 rooms. So it was a small establishment, and only open originally from 9 a.m. in the morning, 10 a.m. in the morning, actually, I think it was, until 6 p.m. at night, 5 days a week. What brothel have you ever heard that opens 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. 5 days a week? But it was very busy, catered to a male clientele, obviously, but it was catered to a business clientele, because it was right on the outskirts of Melbourne CBD, so Central Business District, And it was a fun time, even though I wasn't involved in at the front of house.
So that was Sexpo started in what 19
'96.
96. So you were involved with the brothel for a very long time. So that's
Oh no! I first became involved with the brothel in about '85, I think it was, and that was when the moratorium was announced. And I did a lot of research. I actually donned the suit and tie and went and knocked on neighbours' doors and said, "Are you aware of what's happening at the address?" And they invariably would say no. So I quickly pulled out a pad and paper, and which I had all the forms for. Would you mind writing that down or signing this, saying you had no idea what was happening there, which helped us enormously when it came to the legal case to get the permits. So I was there then '86, I believe it was when the legislation came into effect and we got our permit. And I think it was probably '87 or '88 that I got out of it. And from there, because I won't say, well, the adult industry is, my book is called Life Inside the Adult Industry Bubble. And once you're in it, you get to know everyone else in it, because you socialise with people in the industry, you marry people in the industry, you know, that's your life, because the discrimination that's put upon one by announcing that you're involved in the adult industry can be quite extreme, and so it really is a very close-knit community. So by '88, I'd got to know a lot of people in the industry, and by that stage, the industry was legal in Victoria. And I won't say that it had attracted a better crowd of people, because really most of the people that had the illegals places had all of a sudden become legitimate, which was quite new to them, because as I say, they had previously been criminals by definition. So I had learnt a lot, met a lot of people in the industry, and I always figured I had a bit of a thing for public relations and marketing. So I took a course with the Australian Institute of Public Relations, and then I started offering my services in marketing and public relations to the adult industry, particularly brothels in Melbourne, and some outside of Melbourne. And so it wasn't long after that. Well, that was for several years. And then at one stage, I was approached by Club X, which is a chain of adult bookstores, and they had a problem. Well, they had a perceived problem, and it was in fact a real problem, that they weren't sending the right message to the female market. You know, people of a certain age may remember that adult shops years ago used to be pretty dark and dingy sort of places. You know, I don't know if it's the same in South Africa, but it was often joked about the raincoat brigade hanging out at adult retail stores. And that was pretty much what it was like. And so I was approached by Club X, and I think it took 12 months to negotiate the contract. You know, there was a lot of lunches involved. I remember that. And the brief, in short, was that they wanted to improve their image amongst women, because women really are the major purchaser of hard product, being, you know, vibrators, dildos, you know, and so forth. Whereas men at the time, and this is going back a few years, men at the time were buying DVDs. So they were big purchasers of movies. Women were buying a product. But the problem was that there wasn't enough of them coming into the stores. So the brief was to change the public's perception, in particular women's perception of adult retail stores. So I took the contract, and then, look, did all the normal PR things, did a lot of media, open days, sausage sizzle for a new store, which was really quite amazing, because no one got the joke, and strangely enough, we couldn't give away a sausage. You know? Yes. So a lot of people didn't get the joke there actually. So some months into the contract, it became apparent to me by touring some of the stores, both in Melbourne and around the state and the country, that it didn't matter what I did in regard to public relations. I could tell the public anything they wanted to hear, but once they got into the stores, they were still going to see the dark and dingy place that one would have imagined they'd see when they walk in. So it came to me that I saw actually a lady give a speech, Susan Colvin from California Exotic Novelties, and she was I had a freelance journalist at my desk at the office, and one of the Club X people walked past and said, "Oh, are you coming to this lunch?" And I had no idea about it. So there was a trade day, and Susan Colvin from California Exotic Novelties was giving a presentation, and I took along this freelance journalist. And we were sitting down in this restaurant, and there was probably 60 or 80 people there, white tablecloths, champagne, wine on the tables, and in the middle of the table there'd be an artificial vagina, or a big dildo or a vibrator or something. And Susan would be up the front and she'd be saying, "This fits. This is fits on so and so shelving system. Its recommended retail is this. Pick it up, have a feel of it. We're taking orders later." And everyone was sitting around very matter of factly, picking up these things and playing and going, "Oh, isn't that lovely? That'll fit on my racking system." And it was also a matter of fact and businesslike. And the white tablecloths and the champagne, and in a familiar setting, being a restaurant, I went away from that night, and 3 o'clock in the morning or something the next day, which is when all good ideas come to one apparently, I realised that we needed, rather than try and beat my head against the wall and try and convince the public that it was safe to come into a Club X store and everything was hunky-dory and they were female friendly, I thought it's probably better to take the product out of the store, put it into an environment like the restaurant that people were comfortable going to. So initially it was trying to find an establishment that would suit, and originally it was going to be a 2-day touch and feel episode.
Yes. And then it turned into something bigger. But I just am interested. I'm loving the story, and I'm going to, we're going to get to the expansion into the Sexpo. But what is very intriguing for me is your open-mindedness and your attitude, obviously, towards opening the brothel, and your general attitude towards sex toys and the sex industry. Were you always so open-minded? What got you into this kind of open-minded? I'm not quite sure what other word at this moment it's escaping me.
Well, there's some things that I won't go into now about my past that are somewhat more colourful than I've previously mentioned. But look, when I found myself as a broken down motor mechanic with severe physical injuries, it really was a matter of sink or swim, because I left school relatively early, or very early, and I had nothing else on the table. There was make some money, or spend the insurance payout and then end up on the dole. So I suppose that gave me an entrepreneurial flair right from the outset, where one needs to produce or not. And the not part was not something that was very palatable to me. As I say, I go into detail about my years prior to Sexpo in the book, but I really don't want to delve into them. But suffice to say, colourful would be a nice word, and not always on the right side of the law.
No, I get that completely. Just then, all I can say is working as a sex therapist and really kind of feeling quite empowered as a woman to be able to educate other women in terms of emancipation and using toys in the bedroom and trying to help couples spice up their relationship. It's lovely to hear a man who is so free and free spirited and open to educating the masses too. So what I love about the Sexpo is the opportunity that you provided to the masses to explore beyond the boundaries of such taboo. So what I'm also very, very interested in is the taboo around Sexpo. And I'm sure that you did encounter so many obstacles, legally, socially. So can you tell me more about the taboos that you encountered?
Absolutely. And look, the taboos go on to this day, and discrimination
Yes.
goes on to this day. In fact, I'm doing a bit of work with people from the adult industry that are finding themselves discriminated against from banks and lenders and real estate agents. You know, it goes on and on. But when it comes to Sexpo, right from the word go, when I decided this is what we needed to do, I of course went about finding a venue. And as I said, the original plan was going to be a 2-day touch and feel expo. But and
I
so
love that.
the idea was that we were going to hold this on a Saturday and a Sunday in a small reception area of a hotel, some white tablecloths, hence harking back to the idea from the restaurant, some white tablecloths, some product, and people there explaining to people what the product did, let them touch it and feel it, and that's where it started. And going about trying to find a venue. Look, imagine trying to walk around or ring and try to get appointments to see venue managers and saying, I'd like to put a whole lot of dildos on display in your conference area and invite the public in to come and touch and feel them. How do you feel about that? Well, you can imagine what the response was. And I think, look, it's going back a long way now, but I believe that it took me a good 6 months of looking for a venue, knockback after knockback, and it became very much of a grind. In the meantime, the word had got out in the adult industry that this is what we were planning. And so I was getting phone calls from people saying, can I have a stand? And can I have a booth? And I'm in a booth. We were just going to have tables. You know? So this, and maybe the problem with the venue helped us, because by the time we actually found a venue, we'd almost sold out all the stands. And I think there was only 25 stands at the first show. I mean, I was doing everything from, drawing the floor plan to selling. And I used to walk around with a floor plan in my pocket. So when people rang me and they say, oh, can I book a stand at the show? And I'd pull out one. Yep, that one's still available, no problems. And there was one lady who will remain nameless for the moment, but she was wanting to throw money at, for the stand. And I said, look, I don't know what they're going to cost at the moment, because I'd never been in event management before. And I had to still do all the costing of working out how much we needed to charge for these stands. And originally it was, look, it might be $500. And then after doing a bit more work, it might be $1,000. And I think by the time we did the first show, the stands cost $1,800 each. So it was a long way from the 500 that I had initially anticipated. So look, it was really learning on the fly. And but the discrimination to your point or your question. So the original thing, trying to find a small venue, and then we found the Carlton Crest Hotel in Queens Road in Melbourne, which was pretty suited to what we wanted. And we said that we told the media afterwards that we did 5,000 people. The truth of the matter is, we really don't know how many people we did. I suspect it was more like 3,000, but it was enough to tell us that we had, this was more than a 2-day touch and feel expo, because we had by the time it had got to this stage, There was a stage involved. And for people that are listening, watching, that have been to Sexpo more recently, they may be very surprised to hear that the first show had a stage that was just one riser, like 8 inches. We were playing the music for the performers through a cassette player, where someone would have to go and push the cassette player, and we had a little display next to the stage with next performance on, which was done with cutout letters that we could place next. This is a true story. So this was 1996, October of 1996, and we certainly we worked out very quickly that maybe we've got some business on our. It was originally a public relations exercise, and all of a sudden we thought we might have a business on our hands here. And so we went to Sydney and did a show in February, I believe it was, February or March, at the in King's Cross, at the Gazebo Hotel.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Now, from a public relations point of view, that was probably, I was still pretty green at the time. And looking back at it, I'm thinking, why would I go and put a show where I'm trying to clean up the industry in King's Cross at the Gazebo Hotel, which is a lovely hotel, I'm sure, but it probably wasn't the look we're after. So that show was actually really quite successful too, and no car parking. It was public transport issues. It was really quite amazing that people found their way there. So then it came to, and this goes back to the discrimination point. And I won't digress too much, but so with the we realised we had a business on our hands, and so then I went looking for a more suitable venue, and the Melbourne Exhibition Centre came to mind, and that's of course the major exhibition centre in Melbourne, and one of the biggest in the country. Well, you can probably imagine the response I got. So I then went back to them with a different voice and said, we'd like to book it. And this is when we came up with the Health, Sexuality and Lifestyle Expo tag.
Yes,
and so I said, we'd like to hold a Health, Sexuality and Lifestyle Expo. Can I come and see you? So once again, the suit goes on and I go down to the Melbourne Exhibition Centre. Yes, that's great. It sounds fantastic. Here's some dates. Yes. And so, and the exact time that I told them escapes me, but at some stage I mentioned that actually the show was called Sexpo, Health, Sexuality and Lifestyle Expo. Well, no, that wasn't going to suit the Melbourne Exhibition Centre at all. And they made up, the excuse was that the dates had become available all of a sudden because there was an accountant seminar on at the same time. And so I sort of had my nose a bit out of joint by this stage, and as I said, previous experience outside of Sexpo gave me some sort of inkling about how to deal with such recalcitrant people, and that is to go on the attack. And so I put out a media release saying clearly accountants don't have sex, and they are as boring as they are told that everyone tells they are, because Melbourne Exhibition won't take our booking. Now, that really got us some great publicity, and we were selling stands hand over fist when we didn't have a venue yet. And so I put together a 2 or 3 minute reel video back in the day of footage we'd taken from the show in 1996, and I put that into a montage and put together a glossy brochure and wrote all the nice words about how we were, sort of open to all sexualities, and we were presenting health information and this, that, and the other. And I mean, I'm doing a bit of public speaking at the moment, and the name of the show is the name of the presentation is you can't polish a turd, but you can certainly roll it in glitter. And that's exactly what happened here. Is we rolled the turd in glitter. And made it presentable to the public, and it was a nice, shiny, lovely thing. Oh, isn't that beautiful? When the true idea was to sell adult product, but we had lingerie, we had health information, and I'm not saying that I'm opposed to health information by any stretch, but I'm not completely benevolent. It was because we used to give these stands away to the health people. It was the idea of they were the glitter, spa bars and so forth. So I put together this tape for the MEC, and then I went about gate crashing a boardroom meeting, and I took a 12-pack of these presentation folders and videos down, and I waited outside the Melbourne Exhibition Centre board meeting and waited for all the board members to come out. And once again, dressed in a suit and tie and a nice haircut, and had a bit more hair then than I do now, and presented them with this pack and told them who I was and what was going on. And after many more phone calls and much more lobbying, they ended up coming to the party, and so that was fantastic. And the first show, we only had 3,000 square meters, and I designed the floor plan to soak up space because I thought 3,000 meters was too big. Well, when we opened the door, 39,800 people attended over the 4 days.
My goodness.
This is up from 3,000 we'd done the year before at the Carlton Crest. And it was just, we were wringing our hands going, what are we doing here? We had a lineup that went all the way from one end, because, of course, the Melbourne Exhibition Centre, and this gets back to your point about discrimination, they would take our money, but they put us right at the end of the venue, away from prying eyes. So fortunately they did, in hindsight, because the queue went 4 wide all the way up the concourse, which is a kilometre up and down out the front doors and down the steps into Clarendon Street. And I thought we've blown this. No one's going to come back next year after they've had to wait in line for 2 hours, and then get in. And it was so busy, so packed that people were walking around, and the only way staff could get through the crowd was to take an empty box and walk through the crowd with an empty box to say, coming through. So, and once again, I digress a little, but the point being that the Melbourne Exhibition Centre general manager came up to me at one stage when this queue was a mile long or kilometre long, and he said, David, I'm glad you convinced us. Well, he wasn't quite so forthcoming, but words to the effect of, I'm glad we had the show here in the end. You've really won me over now. I just saw my neighbour in the queue. So this goes to the point of, once again, the discrimination where everyone does it. Your mother and your father did it. That's why you're here. My mother and my father did it. People have sex. People enjoy it. And some people do it for the purpose of procreation. But mention it in a business environment, and it's like, oh no, we can't have any of that. And it's just, it still confounds me to this day that that's the case. But it goes on to this day.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So that's exactly what I was thinking about. Sex is still taboo. And as much as we think that we're living in a modern society that is evolved, and, I know certainly that Sexpo in South Africa, in Johannesburg at Nasrec, was massive. And there, it was packed out, and it was a really fabulous event. There is still this cloud above sex and sexuality. It's still not really spoken about, and it's very undercover. So it seems that some things have changed, and yet some things have not changed. And as you mentioned earlier, that you looked at these financiers and these accountants and lawyers, and you thought, really, do you guys not have sex? Do you not have kinks? And it's ridiculous. Of course they do. What is this element that people are so offended by when it comes to sex and toys and this kind of thing?
Tracy, if I knew that, then I'd be a lot smarter than I am. Look, I really don't know. I mean, it seems. Someone's asked me if I felt any sort of pride in having brought Sexpo to the market, and I do, because it seems the general public have become a lot more open about the topic. by sheer numbers, demonstrated by sheer numbers coming through the door. As you mentioned, in South Africa, numbers were even better per head, per capita, than Australia. South Africa was a marvellous success for us. So the general public vote with their feet by coming to the show, but a lot of it, and it goes back to the meeting I had with the venue in 1996 after the show, after the successful show where we did somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 people, and met with the general manager of the venue on the Monday and said, "Okay, let's book for next year." And he said, "David, it won't be happening next year at this venue." And now he did us a favour in the end, because that pushed me to go and lobby the MEC and get the MEC in the end. But I would have made that booking there and then, sitting with him, and we would have been stuck for another year in a small venue. And but he did us a favour. But the reason he gave was that the Catholic Church had been on the phone to him and said, "If this show you show that show again, we will take all our business out." And the Catholic Church have conventions and lunches and whatever, book hotel rooms. And I said, I actually took down a note while I was speaking to him. I said, "So you're saying the Catholic Church said they won't have," and of course I used that in the media release later on as well. But so the church, and I'm a committed atheist. I'll put that out there. I believe in science, but the church have a lot to answer for in regard to suppression of people's attitudes towards sex, or the changing of people's attitudes towards sex. However, the majority of people, it seems, or the large amount of people that have defied those edicts by the church are voting with their feet coming to Sexpo, but the church persists, and they have a lot of sway over businesses. And I'm sorry if I sound anti-religious, but they're the bane of the adult industry's life.
Absolutely, I agree, and I see a lot of the effects of religious dogma on my clients, and the consequences of that. The religious ethics, values on couples and their relationships towards sex and within their relationships, as I said. And it's a real pity, because there's also seems to be a changing trend within religious institutions to teach about different kind of sex education these days, although we still do have quite the other side of the extremists who are still teaching the same kind of stringent laws around sex and sexuality. But we are starting to see some kind of more open-mindedness. So there was another kind of point that I wanted to touch on with you, and that was around, so firstly, I think that what you have done for the market is sex market, the exposure to toys and being okay around play is absolutely amazing. How come the South African market was more receptive than the Australian market?
Well, I may have misspoken when I said that per capita South Africa was more popular than Australia, but I would say, and I don't have the figures right in front of me, but I would say that it certainly is on a par. Right? So I'll correct myself and say it's on a par. And the funny thing is that I've done a lot of media in South Africa over the years, and numerous journalists have said to me, "Oh, David, it's, we're all very sort of conservative over here. I don't know how you're going to go." And what happened? South Africans, thank you very much, turned up in your droves. And I believe what it is that the media, the mainstream media, in most part, try and instill this fear. And let's be honest about this: that a lot of the media money comes from advertising from business. Businesses are associated with religion, and everyone's afraid of upsetting the religious. And yet, you look at the numbers, and it doesn't ring true. But anyway, So all these journalists would say to me, "Oh, David, how do you think you're going to go? We're all very conservative over here." And as I say, the proof was in the pudding. And I would say in answer that everyone I met in South Africa, and every time I'm in South Africa, I believe that people are more open to discussing the subject and more open about their behaviour than those in Australia. And so I think I've got a bit of a theory that the mainstream media, for whatever reason, whether it's the religion or whatever it is, but the mainstream media are trying to tell people that they're conservative, but that doesn't make it so. You know? Just because they print something on the front page of the newspaper, which should be an opinion piece, it doesn't make it so. And so if anyone can say, "Oh, South Africans are so conservative, you know, they'll never talk about sex, they'll never stand in line next to someone going into a show like that," well, rubbish.
Agreed. And completely agreeable, because I'm seeing so many more people who are open to the idea of a whole range of, as I say, sexual play, from BDSM to swinging to all types of kinks, and couples really wanting to spark up their sex lives. A lot of people here in South Africa, youngsters, are a lot more open to talking about sex, their issues that they're having around sex. And also the demographic for us here in South Africa, a lot of young Black people are so open with their changing ideas, their changing needs in their relationships. They're being far more vocal with what they want from their partners. And this is also challenging a little bit of cultural views, cultural opinions, religious opinions. White South Africans are still a little bit stuck, conservative, but the youngsters are still very much wanting to explore more and more willing to talk about their needs and their
Well,
sexuality.
I hope I was in some part responsible for that, you know, over there in South Africa.
I'm very, very sure you have. And especially this brings me to the point of Soweto Sexpo. I'm sure you're aware that this was taking place, Soweto Sexpo.
I have Sex Expo, is it?
Yes, it's Soweto. You know, Soweto is
Yeah. Oh,
a
yes, yes, yes,
township.
yes. But I think it's called Love the Sex Expo, isn't it?
So there are two. So Soweto Expo was taking place, I think it was in 2018.
Right.
I'm not quite sure how long it ran for. I think it was 2018 and 2019, or 2020. Yes, Soweto Sex Expo was 2020. No, I think it was cancelled because of
COVID, isn't it?
COVID. Because I was looking for a Sexpo, and I came across this Soweto Sexpo, and then
Well,
we were actually.
so just to clarify that, so
Mm,
it's Sex Expo. So
oh,
the term Sexpo is trademarked and is protected by, you know, international conventions. I would be not that I'm any longer involved in the business. However, I think in 2018, no, I probably was already out. But it used to be a lot of my job to keep an eye on trademark infringements. Because everyone, man and his dog, thought they could run a show and call it Sexpo, and you know, it was another real indication of how successful we'd been with branding, in that, you know, just like Hoover has become a term for vacuuming, you know, Coke has become a term for, you know, soda, or, you know, it seemed that everyone just understood or thought that they could have a sex expo and call it Sexpo. So I used to spend quite a lot of time in discussions with our trademark attorneys, dealing with such matters. You know, I don't think I ever had one in South Africa. But you know, America was a prime candidate. They just thought that they could run Sexpo and it was okay. We'd write them a nice letter to start with. We did actually have we did have one. We got to court in one instance in the US and won. So anyway, I digress. But so that was called Love the Sex Expert. An interesting story about that is that the lady behind that show is the sister, and who actually worked at Sexpo in the early years when it was Sexpo, and she's the sister of the gentleman who I did the license agreement with, and we were in talks to, and then they sold. Look, if anyone's thinking about wants to run a Sexpo over there, let me know. I can broker a deal for you. But Sexpo, the brand was so successful in South Africa that 2 years after signing the license agreement, the license was on sold for more than 2 million Australian dollars.
Wow.
2 years these people ran for, sold it for over 2 million Australian dollars. That licensee then went on to run it for another 8 or 9 years. It was on sold again, amount undisclosed. And then, of course, the last licensee, unfortunately, had some issues out at Nazareth with the soccer game and put him under enormous financial pressure. Of course, head office in Australia, we wanted our pound of flesh because obviously you can't use the brand for nothing. And that was the last show, really. Oh, sorry, no, he tried to run one at Santon in early 2017, and that was a failure due to his urgency in getting a show on, picking the wrong dates. But the Sex Expo, love the Sex Expo. Look, it's just unfortunate they can't. They chose not to engage us and call it Sexpo because the brand in South Africa, having been run for 10 years, is very strong. And love the Sex Expo, I'm afraid, just doesn't. People are still calling it Sexpo, as even you were. Love the Sex Expo just doesn't have a ring to it, I'm afraid.
So, David, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to run a similar kind of expo, because it's so completely needed? Also, from a health education, from a sexual health educational perspective, because we're very, very much into sexual health at the moment. I myself am very involved on quite a few platforms. It's very important to educate the public about sexual health. So what advice would you give?
I strongly encourage anyone listening to get in contact with me because I've spoken to the current owners of the trademark based in Australia, and they're certainly open to doing a deal to relaunch in South Africa. And I think starting from scratch, I mean, there's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel. Sexpo is such a strong brand, and for the small amount of money payable to use the brand, it seems really pointless to me to try and start an exhibition called something else when you've got 10 years of history. So I would say if anyone is interested in running an exhibition of an adult nature, contact me and I can put you in contact with the trademark owners, because they'd love to have Sexpo back in South Africa. Yeah,
I think that we really, really need that as a country, as a city. We could take it to Durban, Cape Town. I think that would be absolutely vital. Definitely continuing the education and letting go of the taboo of sex.
Look, I mean, pardon me for getting a bit of a plug in here, but I did mention to you before about the more salacious parts that will be included in the book, and I would also encourage anyone to that's interested in getting an advanced copy of the book, or getting an invite to a launch party. As soon as the COVID business is done and dusted, I'll be doing a speaking tour of South Africa and also conducting launch parties for the book. So if anyone's interested in well, they can book me for a speaking gig as well, of course. But if anyone's interested in getting an invite to a launch party ticket or an advanced copy of the book, they should go to the Mr. Sexpo website, which is Mr-Sexpo.com. and they'll be first in line.
Oh, I'm so excited about that. So when are you planning to get to South Africa to launch your
Well,
book?
it really, our borders are just opening up now, but I believe, I'm not sure what the current situation in South Africa is, but I'd be looking at somewhere middle of next year, I think, because there's quite a bit of planning involved to get all the speaking engagements done and dusted, and my agent's looking at that now. We've got to work that in with what's happening here in Australia. But I would hope to think that we could do it by middle of next year.
Are you ready for the onslaught of publicity and your talks, your media presentations, and the demand for you? Are you ready for it?
Well, I'm sort of living a fairly quiet life these days. So apart from the odd gig and plus writing my book, so I sort of semi-retired and thought it'd be nice to live on the coast and by the water, and so it has become a little bit too quiet. So I'm actually looking forward to getting my teeth back into something a bit marketing PR, which I'm handling the marketing and PR for the book, and my agent's looking after the speaking, but I'm looking after the PR for the marketing and PR for the book, and I'm enjoying doing that rather than just tapping away at the keyboard. I won't say 8 hours a day because I'm not tapping away 8 hours a day, but the writing of an autobiography, anyone's ever done it can be a painful process. Well, it is a painful process, and it throws up all number of emotions and memories that it's a real, anyone that's written an autobiography, I take my hat off to you.
Yeah, well, I've tried my hand at writing a book as well, and it's got as far as writing an outline and doing some research, and I will do it eventually one day.
Well,
David, yeah.
No, it's. I keep saying to people, it's a long and slow, tedious process. But someone have said it's like giving birth, I can't speak to that, but I have seen my darling ex-wife give birth, and it looks pretty familiar to me.
I agree. There's just one last thing, unless you want to share something else as well, is talking about people in the industry and their long-standing experience, or long-standing will stay in the industry. You said that it can be quite taxing on these people, and the discrimination that they face being in the industry in terms of getting employment and so on. And so you said that they should have a plan B.
Most definitely. I mean, people that have been in the industry, and look, I actually toyed with the idea of going and getting a job outside of the adult industry a couple of years ago, because I was starting to get a bit bored. And so I toyed with that idea, and so I put together a resume, which was fairly descriptive of what I'd done in the past, and guess what? No takers. It reminded me of a movie that had Bruce. Anyway, the name escapes me, but Fun with Dick and Jane, it was called, and where the lead role, the man, did something dodgy, and he had to go and find another job, and he'd go to interviews and think he was in with a chance, and I say, "Oh no, we don't want to employ you. We just want to hear the stories." And so it reminded me. So that idea of finding a job outside the adult industry lasted about 5 minutes. I think I sent my resume out to maybe half a dozen people, maybe a dozen, and then it became quickly apparent that wasn't the way forward. So I've had to entertain myself in other ways. So yes, look, people need a plan B, and particularly a lot of people that are entertainers, that are not in the business side of the business. I mean, they're running their own business, so they are in business, but that's got a shelf life, you know? And it's most important to get the finances in order early on when it's all beer and skittles, the money's coming in and it's all beautiful. But when the shelf life starts to get towards its expiry date, that money can dry up very quickly. And I can only imagine someone who's been in the front line of the adult industry, or as an entertainer. I mean, what do they put on their resume? How do they? So they need to be self-sufficient. They need to set themselves up right from word go. And so I have actually teamed up with some financial advisors here in Australia who are adult industry friendly, because people in the adult industry, they've often worked, multiple jobs prior to going in the industry, single parent a lot, and they can be a little jaded by the experience of being in the adult industry and the type of discrimination they've suffered. And so it's most important when you're trying to deal with people that have been jaded is to make sure they trust you. And the people that I've selected to do that are well regarded, and they've got a good attitude towards the adult industry. So and when we haven't done this in South Africa yet, but if there's a demand, I'll certainly look at it. But it's I would say to anyone that's listening, watching, if you're in the adult industry, it's not going to last forever unless you start a business that can employ other people. But you need to make sure your finances are in order.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And it's just so ironic that Sexpo, this industry is really aimed at women, for women, the opportunity for them to feel safe. And I'm talking about Sexpo, and that's why you started it, really. An opportunity for them to explore their sexuality and to make sure that it is an environment for women to get there, men there as well, and that it's driven by women. And yet the majority of women in the adult industry, the majority of people in the adult industry are women. And
Yes,
they're the ones who are
true.
discriminated mostly.
That is an unfortunate truth. And as I say, that's not why, but that is an unfortunate truth. But it doesn't matter, male, female, or other. And there's a lot of transgender people working in the industry too. And so, once again, combine the discrimination that transgender people suffer, combined with the fact that if they've worked in the adult industry, really. Absolutely. So look, in closing, I think that's if anyone's got to take away from this, is it's all good and well to have the public on your side, and be supportive of the industry, but when it comes to dealing with the business, businesses are all too keen, all too reticent to be seen to be supporting the adult industry because they think it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. They think that the general public will boycott them if they're seen to be supporting the adult industry. Nothing could be further from the truth. So the point being is, in closing, I say that people must make sure that they start their journey towards financial security very early on, because no one's coming for you. They need to make sure they're looking after themselves.
100%. One last thing: does sex sell?
Well, look, I mean, I think I've often joked that I can't take much credit for the tens of thousands of people that would show up to each show, because if I couldn't get a crowd into a show called Sexpo, then I need to be looking at my marketing credentials. So I would say that in Sexpo, or sex in general, is certainly a marketable commodity, but it certainly needs to be done in a nuanced way. And I think, fortunately, we got that right.
David, Thank you, thank you, thank you again for your time. I've enjoyed this chat so much, and I know that our audience, our listeners, our viewers are going to get so much information from you, and we're looking so forward to the launch of your book so that we can get more of the nitty-gritty behind the man and behind the events. And I'm very looking forward to meeting you, hopefully, and to getting
Yes.
your book. And it's really been an honor for me to
Well,
interview you. And I really, really appreciate your time. So
well,
thank
thank
you
you very
very
much,
much.
Tracy, and I thank you very much. And I once again just encourage people to pop off the Mr. Sexpo website if they want to, because not so much the book, because obviously if they're not interested in a pre advanced copy, then that's fine. But the invitation to the launch parties will only be available to people who have registered on the website. So thank
Brilliant.
you once again.
And thank you to you too. And have a lovely, lovely evening.